Thanks for coming to my training on Presession Paring. I've come up with a few interview questions that I would like to ask you guys, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Of course.
All right. The first question that I have for you about Presession Paring is, can you tell me a little bit about how you approach pairing with a new student, or when you are new to working with a student?
When when I approach pairing with a student, especially if it's a new student, it's very important to know what they're interested in so that you can start to build that rapport with them using the things that they like. If you are just guessing and doing things, trying to be fun, there's a lot of kids, who love weather. There's other kids who get scared talking about weather. So I think just knowing what they're interested in to use as reinforcement is one of the more important things to do.
One of the things that I think is the most important thing to do when you're pairing with a new student, or I think it's good practice every day, is to check and see where the student is at on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If their fundamental needs are not being met, you're not even going to be able to start to even initiate or build or maintain any kind of rapport. So you need to first analyze the setting events and meet your student where they're at for that day, in that moment, and go from there. And then, as Bobby said, meeting your student where they're at, that doesn't even just go for your basic human needs. It also goes for your area of interest. So also trying to do preference assessments and find out exactly what it is into.
What are some important things to remember or consider when you are pairing with kids who have very different skill levels? For instance, how would pairing look for a student who is a young early learner and nonverbal versus an adolescent that has very developed conversation skills?
It just so happens I have two clients that meet that exact criteria. And I've seen a lot of people where they struggle is they'll walk up to an early learner and in a very flat affect be like, okay, it's time to work on math. Let's open up your book. And the kid turns around and looks at them and goes, "Eee!" You're not meeting the student where they're at. It's not age or ability appropriate. And vice versa, if you try to walk up to, one of my 12, 13, 14-year-old clients that has advanced vocabulary and can have a 30-minute conversation with you about, an area of their interest, and you start talking to them like, "Oh, I love how you're sitting so nicely," and "Oh, you're doing a good job," they're going to look at you like, "What is wrong with this guy?" And they're going to be offended because they feel like they're being talked down to. And that's not going to help you build any kind of rapport. You need to meet that child where they're at, both age and ability.
For me, I think there are, different things to keep in mind whenever you are pairing with kids of different skill levels. One thing that's the same, though, is you want to be enthusiastic. Be excited about the things that you're doing. If you are flat, if you're not into it, they can tell. And, sometimes they don't want to be there. So I think being enthusiastic, it gets them more involved and excited about what you're trying to do. As far as differences, I completely agree with what Charles said. It's important to meet them at their level so that they can understand you, or if they, don't seem, you never want the client to feel like you're talking down to them. So
my next question for you is, does your approach to pairing look different for telehealth sessions and in-person sessions? If so, how are they different?
Well, when I'm doing a session via telehealth, I have to take into consideration of the fact I can't touch the client. I can't have any kind of physical interaction. I can't do tickles, high fives, fist bumps, whatever the case may be. So I have to get creative in the sense that and especially with trying to keep it attending, you have to really think outside of the box. And you don't want to be sitting in front of a computer, talking like this, not moving, and you're in frame and you're boring, you can work your camera. So if y'all have seen me do Pete the Cat, it's really loud and it's like, talking about Pete the Cat stepped in a large pile of blueberries. Is that exciting, or is it Pete stepped in a large pile of blueberries? That's a good way to be enthusiastic, work your camera, and keep the child motivated and attending, and it's going to keep their buy-in, and they're going to be like, oh wow, this guy's fun, and it's not as Bueller.
Yeah, I completely agree with Charles as well. I think there are a lot of differences with telehealth and being able to work with a client in person. In person, you can use physical prompts, you can use your environment, and I tend to use the environment a lot with my clients, whether it's just a bird or a duck or a squirrel outside, or a book in the environment, or a toy that I can tell that they're gravitating towards. Like, I'm using my environment a lot. So on video, I actually have to use videos or have some sort of information that I know that the client is going to be really interested in before I even hop on the session. Because whenever you're on a video session, you don't really have time to be fishing for something that is interesting to your client. So make sure that you have, videos pulled up already. Like I have a client who loves the outdoors, loves dinosaurs, loves weather, things like that. So I make sure to have videos pulled up beforehand, so that if he needs reinforcement right away, or if we're just trying to build rapport one day, I have those things ready. And then, so if you can't find a video on a specific item that your client is interested in, you can always use facts as well. And you can incorporate that into what they're learning as reinforcement. There was one day that I found an article about his favorite dinosaur, and we actually read, and that's what he wanted to use for his reinforcement that day. So just because something seems like it's a work task, you can sometimes use it as reinforcement if it's something that they're very interested in.
My next question is, what would you say to a parent that is concerned that pairing takes away from valuable instruction time?
This one's very important because I can see where the parent is coming from, but it's incredibly important to realize that if you can use yourself as reinforcement, it's very powerful. So if we build so much rapport that your child finds me reinforcing even when we're doing work, it's awesome, because they're naturally going to be able to do more work. They're going to be able to work for a longer period of time, and they're going to get more out of their day. That takes time to build, though. Sometimes, we'll do a week, 2 weeks of rapport building up front so that the client can get to know who they're going to be working with and, have that rapport built. If we go right into work, or, we work all day and there's no rapport building, they're not going to be focused on what we're doing. They're probably going to show a lot more behaviors. It's more about being present in the moment while you're working, instead of being off somewhere else and just kind of drudging through it. It's far more effective to be focused on the work, and that takes reinforcement up front.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Bobby said, and buy-in is 100% what we're talking about. And just as much as student buy-in is important, so is parent buy-in. And how you achieve the parent buy-in is by achieving the student buy-in. I had a client's parent tell me that they spent 2 years just trying to get their child to look at them, and the first time they witnessed a session with me and their student, they were blown away at the ability their student had and how they were almost in a sense underselling their student, or their kid, underselling their child. And to have that rapport, how I would explain it to them is well, do you like to do things or be around someone you don't like. I'm going to be spending 7 hours, well, I'm going to be spending 5 hours a day telling your child what to do. And if I don't have a relationship with him that's solid, we're not going to get anywhere. And it's going to lead to maladaptive behavior. It's going to lead to crisis. A lot of people, I don't think they put enough credit into how respect is earned. And respect is not something that is given. Respect is something that's earned. And that goes for children just as it does for adults.
I would have the parent kind of think about it this way. Let's say you're at work and you have 20 tasks a week that you need to get done. Let's say 1 week you're going to take vacation. So you have 2 days off. You have to get those same 20 tasks done in 3 days. The reason you're able to do that is because you're working more effectively. And it's this same way with our clients and with your children that we're working with. By having rapport built, they can work more effectively, therefore getting more done in less time.
And my last question I have for you is, what are some of the roadblocks you have encountered in pairing? And if you have encountered roadblocks, how have you overcome them?
One thing that I found is when you're dealing with very early learners, it can be really difficult at times to build and establish rapport and pair yourself with that child. Just as you're doing any kind of conditioned response with stimuli, you are the ultimate stimuli. So you want to be appealing to that child. And when you have a child that their only interest or reinforcement is satisfying some kind of internal event, some sort of automatic event is occurring, so that student is engaging in a lot of stereopity, you're missing an opportunity to connect with that child. I like to overcome that obstacle. By engaging in the stereopity with the child. So if the child is making a lot of noises like yee, 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 I might engage with them. I might be like yee, yee with them, and it might end up with like some echoics going on, and that's starting the rapport. If they're flapping their hands and you walk up and you just start flapping with them, they start rocking and smiling, and they're like, wow, he gets it, he gets me. You're developing that buy-in, that rapport. You're meeting them where they're at. And when you're dealing with nonverbal kids, that's a very effective way to do it. You can always shape it later or put it on extinction or put in a replacement behavior for something that's more socially appropriate later down the road. But you need to build that buy-in. You need to pair yourself to be fun, enjoyable, and pleasant to be around before you start putting demands on that child. And that's really hard to do when you have a nonverbal child who's a very early learner that maybe the only thing that they like to do is twirl beads. So maybe you should pick up some beads and start twirling with them. And they're gonna look at you, and it's gonna be probably really unique to them to see an adult engaging in the stereopity that they're typically used to displaying. They're gonna be like, wow, look, he's doing it too. And then usually it's very warmly received. If not, you'll find out quickly.
Another example I can give is, working with children with high intensity behaviors. Of course, there's going to be roadblocks. Even in that first week or two that we're working together and we are strictly building rapport, even though there's no demands, they're still going to exhibit behaviors, and you have to understand that that's okay, because working through those high intensity behaviors with the child is going to help you build rapport. Make sure to keep them safe, keep yourself safe. And at the end of that, behavior, make sure you go over everything, that happened with the child, and acknowledge, that they felt upset. I understand you felt upset. What made you feel that way? Did you feel unsafe? What can we do next time to make sure you don't feel that way again? Or reassuring them, okay, you were upset about this. Well, how about we do this next time? Just tell me and we'll leave. We'll go to another spot. There's a lot of things you can do to help the kid work through those behaviors. And I think one of the ultimate rapport builders is making the client feel safe. So if you can work through those things together, get to a point where they feel comfortable and safe in the building and with you, you're going to go a really, really long way with helping that kid with their behaviors.
So. To piggyback off what Bobby said there is, that consistency is key. Knowing that if the child, no matter how many times I hit Mr. Charles, kick Mr. Charles, spit on Mr. Charles, or cuss Mr. Charles out, he's going to be responding the exact same way. And once that behavior is over, we're going to go right back into our schedule like nothing happened. They may not get that at home. The consequences for their behavior at home could be vastly different than what they see at school. And, alleviating that anxiety of, is there going to be any kind of punitive consequence is going to, help build rapport with that child, where eventually they're going to be like, gosh, no matter what I do to this guy, he still loves me. And that could be a lot more than what they're getting at home. That is invaluable, and in itself will help build rapport and strengthen your relationship with that individual.
Okay, well, I just wanted to thank you guys for answering these questions. I hope that everyone who is watching this video finds it helpful, and you can take what Bobby and Charles said to better understand how to work with pairing with your client more effectively.